Spaza shops originated in the apartheid era in the 1970s when locals would sell goods such as cooking oil or sugar informally from their houses, thus the word, spaza, which means just getting by, in one of the locals' languages. They began to sprout in that era, in the 1970s, when the apartheid government banned black businesses. These informal businesses thrived throughout the years and played a major role in employing black South African entrepreneurs in townships. Since the democratic era of the country, economic migrants from countries such as Pakistan, Bangladesh, Somalia, Ethiopia, had spotted an opportunity in the informal retail township economy. They studied the South African local spaza shops' weaknesses, which was an apathetic government, allowing them to come up with an invasive strategic plan in the townships. They realized that in the townships, low price was the only priority. The first steps in economic colonization is exploration. These different groups of economic migrants would come in firstly as hawkers selling blankets and cell phone covers on credit to customers in the townships and were studying the landscape as they dispersed throughout the country. The second step in economic colonization is defining zones of interests. These groups of immigrants saw a potential in the township's economy. The third step in economic colonization is conquering the land. After careful consideration and studying of these local businesses, the economic migrants, as a network, would target a local supermarket and set up spaza shops which would build a perimeter right around the local business. This way, they cut off the life support of the supermarket by intercepting its customers from all directions. They entice the supermarket's customers firstly by convenience as they are closer to them and secondly by aggressively competing with lower product prices. Eventually, these foreign-owned spaza shops mushroom throughout the entire township, saturating the business. Now the market share is smaller for the local business. These foreigner spaza shops thrived in South Africa because the country was fertile ground for these types of shops as they hardly faced any implementations of regulations or bylaws. They could erect a building structure without paying and obtaining an approved plan from the municipality. They could buy stock and start operating immediately without obtaining a permit or trading license, and they would utilize electricity without paying for it. They would also cut business costs by sleeping inside their establishments, which is also prohibited by law as it poses a health risk to consumers. The local supermarket on the hand is faced with a monthly bill of water and electricity consumption, rates and taxes, security expenses, bank charges and the wage bill since the business provides employment for locals. All of these expenses, like VAT for example, have to be added to a product which pushes up the selling price, which in turn puts off consumers since these spaza shops have created an unrealistic market price to compete with. These shops can then use this to their advantage because they are below radar without any laws governing them. By law, spaza shops can only sell a certain criteria of products. Products which would be exclusively available to the local supermarket are now offered by these illegal spaza shops too, and at a lower price since their overheads are low. Now the local supermarket's products which had a higher markup are no longer selling. These product groups would aid the local business, for example, with paying the municipality's bill. Money that would go to the government is now diverted to these spaza shops that have been reported to be sending money out of the country, in some cases to fund terrorist groups. The government then puts further pressure by targeting and raiding local businesses, demanding compliance, further driving consumers towards foreign-owned spaza shops because more compliance means higher selling prices for local shops. The local business is eventually overwhelmed and gives in when the migrant spaza shop owners offer to rent the business. As legitimate local businesses shut their doors, all the money that was destined to go to the municipality, all way to the South African Receiver of Revenue, SARS, is now diverted to these spaza shops. Today there are over 150,000 spaza shops nationwide and growing yearly by 6%. Now the informal business market sector, including spaza shops, is worth over 170 billion rand. One may think that these spaza shops are tiny. What harm can they do?
It's just one ant!
Yeah, boss, they're puny!
Puny? Say, let's pretend this grain is a puny little ant.
Did that hurt?
Nope.
Well, how about this one? Are you kidding? How about this? You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
Collectively, these spaza shops take a huge chunk out of the market. Foreign-owned spaza shops contribute close to 6% of the GDP. Even retail giants like ShopRite and Pick n Pay wanted to cash in on the market by getting closer to their customers through mini-stores like YouSave, as they also felt the pinch of these spaza shops. Today, a very large portion of the township economy is owned by immigrants, mainly consisting of Ethiopians. In most cases, many of such spaza shops are owned by one person who has several immigrant employees, each assigned to each shop. They usually employ illegal immigrants from their own countries as means of control so that they could be subjected to their command. In this way, the runners of these shops work under their restrictions and are compelled to run these spaza stores as they provide shelter for them. These immigrant employees can live under extreme conditions that South Africans can't live under, which are usually a violation of the country's laws as they pose a health risk to consumers. Living under conditions such as sleeping inside the establishment where they both relieve themselves in a bucket and bath themselves too after working long hours, all of which is prohibited by law. The community has been content with spaza shops because they brought convenience and affordable prices. These spaza shops toppled a lot of local businesses using a Robin Hood business model, which seemed to be, rob the government and feed the poor. Another demonstration is the sale of illicit cigarettes, mostly in the townships. The minimum that one can buy a loose cigarette for is 3 rand. These spaza shops have made it possible for people to buy a loose cigarette for a minimum of 50 cents. While this discouraged a lot of South African Townships businesses who would end up shutting their doors or giving in by renting their shops out, as these foreign spaza shop owners are also known for pestering South Africans. Foreigners usually offer to rent their businesses knowing well that they plan to run it their own way without compliance, because all they will be paying for is a fixed amount of rent and maybe an incredibly low amount for electricity on a tempered prepaid meter. Around the year 2013, when foreign-owned shops were a phenomenon because they were booming throughout the country, the public was in awe and was even willing to learn from foreigners on how to run businesses in South Africa. South Africans were fooled into thinking that a business could pay overheads such as water and electricity, VAT, rent, stock shrinkage and salaries all on a markup of 5% only. In future they were to find out the truth behind these low prices, and unfortunately a rude awakening that would cost their children's lives.